The Islamic world has been keeping a lot of secrets from a lot of people, but the one we're talking about today is the most significant. Get ready, folks, because this one is earth-shattering. All right, folks, let's get into this. I am incredibly excited to present to you the second of these videos that we did with Dr. Jay Smith. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dr. Jay Smith has been on with us several times on this channel. He is a remarkably brilliant man, and I am absolutely thrilled to have been doing so much work with him. And what's really exciting is the fact that several weeks ago, he came to our church and he made some incredible presentations on the subject of Islam. And Dr. Smith talked about the Qur'an, which of course was a video that we released just a few days ago. And I think you'll want to watch it. It's pretty powerful. There's a lot of secrets that Islam does not want you to know, the Islamic world, concerning that. And today we're doing the same thing with the subject of Muhammad. And I kid you not, this stuff is literally earth-shattering. So I want you to pay attention to what he has to say. So we're going to watch this together. And of course, I will provide some commentary, but not nearly as much as I normally do, simply because the nature of how Jay makes his presentation, and there doesn't need to be anything really added other than for you to hear some of my own personal thoughts, which is what I do with these videos. And what Jay did is remarkable. By the way, as I said just a second ago, you can go and look at the presentation that he did on the Qur'an just a few days ago that I released a few days ago, or you could go to the Calvary Chapel Signal Hill website and look at the uninterrupted presentation that he made that was different from this one and the one that you heard a few days ago. They're all very good. I would encourage you to take part in them, and what you're about to hear is earth-shattering. So pay attention. This is a good one, and let's jump right into it. Dr. Smith is a blessing.
What a guy you have. This is an amazing man. And if you look at his YouTube channel, he is just going exponentially. He has doubled the number of subscribers I have, and I've been going since 2007. Now, my area of on my YouTube is only on Islam and only on polemics and only on historical polemics. So he is correct. I am the only one in the world that has a PhD in Islamic polemics, which is a tragedy when you stop and think of it. This is the fastest growing religion in the world. It's taking over the world. It's going to surpass Christianity as the largest religion in just 30 years. And I'm the only one that's confronting it using historical criticism. Isn't that tragic? Now, there are others. Here are some right down here. These are some of my students that have come with us. We have a whole area of Masters of Arts in Apologetics and Polemics to Islam that was part of Calvary Chapel, Veritas International University, which is your seminary. Used to be here in Costa Mesa. We've now moved to Albuquerque because it's just too hard to take on Islam in California anymore. There are too many restrictions. There's too many high taxes as well, from what I understand. So we moved to Albuquerque, but we do all our teaching online. Everything is done by Zoom webinar every Monday night.
By the way, I want to just say this before he goes on. When he talks about Islam being the fastest growing religion in the world, this is something that I've talked about on multiple occasions. It's not the fastest growing because of conversions. It's the fastest growing because of the birth rate of Muslims. And this is a very important issue that Jay spoke about in the video that we released a few days ago. And it's something you're going to want to pay attention to. It's really, really important. And just wait and hold on until you hear what he has to say here. It's going to blow your mind.
And so we are introducing this whole new area of polemics. Not looking at the Qur'an, not trying to show what's wrong with the Qur'an, not even reading one verse of the Qur'an. We don't need to do that. Or looking at Muhammad himself and trying to say how just irresponsible he is, or just totally irrelevant for the 21st century. That's a whole area that I used to do for 30 years. I've been working 40 years at this. That was what I used to do. I've kind of moved away from that because that's that close to what we call hate speech or Islamophobia. And that's what most Muslims are upset about. When you start confronting Muhammad, when you start confronting his misogyny, or you confront his violence. And that's what's causing all the problems with missionaries, because once you do that, you're thrown out of universities. I used to do all the debates in Britain from 1995 to 2010. We were there 25 years in Britain, in London, and I would go down to Speaker's Corner, get up on a ladder, and take on hundreds of Muslims every Sunday. My team is down there right now doing that. But I was the one that was asked to go on universities to debate and confront the Muslim scholars. And I would do that until 2010. And then I was seen as a hate preacher and Islamophobe. And I was then barred from any university after 2010 by the National Union of Students, the NUS. I couldn't go on in a university after that. That may come to the United States. So far, I'm allowed to go on the universities here. I can go still do debates here. We still have that freedom here. You need to make sure that freedom remains, that freedom of speech. Because the way that we're going to destroy Islam requires freedom of speech. Islam hates freedom of speech for very good reasons. They cannot defend themselves. They can't defend any of their historicity. They can't defend even their own prophet and what he did and what he said. They can't defend this book, the Qur'an. We talked about that in the last service. There's so many problems with this book just internally. But what I'm going to do today, and what I want to do and share with you, is not talk about the Qur'an so much. I want to talk about the man behind this book. Because you have three things that really hold up Islam, three pillars that hold this up Islam. One man, one book, and one place. The man is Muhammad, the book is the Qur'an, and the place is Mecca. Now, it's like a stool with three legs. You take out one of those legs and the other two fall, right? So you just need to remove either Mecca or Muhammad or the Quran, and the stool is going to fall. And that stool is Islam. Islam is so dependent on them that take away one away, the other two fall, Islam falls. We follow the same paradigm. We are also dependent on one book and one man. Maybe not one place, but certainly one book and one man. This book, the Bible, the man behind it would be Jesus Christ. You take out Jesus out of the Bible, there is no Bible left. Or there's pretty much you destroy the Bible, don't you? And you destroy us. You take the Bible out of Jesus and there's no Jesus. You need the Bible for Jesus. So if we got rid of our Bible and if we got rid of our man, we would also get rid of Christianity. And that has been attempted over and over again since the time of Germany to start doing this back in the 1800s. There in the University of Tübingen, people like Wellhausen, who started attacking the Bible and started saying, hold on a minute, how could there have been one author of the first 5 books? Four different ways of calling God God, called the JEDP, documentary hypothesis. Looking at the first 11 chapters of Genesis and saying there's no historical support for any of these chapters. We don't know of anybody called Abraham. Therefore, much of this, almost all of the first 11 chapters you could throw out of the Bible as nothing more than fiction. You've heard this. This is still being said and still being taught in many of our universities. And then they started looking at the person of Jesus, saying, was there really a Jesus who died on the cross? There was probably a man named Jesus. It's a very common name. And you have right down the road here in Claremont, there in the seminary here in Claremont. And they went through all the gospel accounts and they were taking out anything that was ahistorical, anything that was scientifically wrong, anything that was a historical anachronism, anything that they found that could not have been there from the original text. And they took out 82% of the New Testament and only retained 18%. That happened just down the road here. That was called the Jesus Seminar. They're at Claremont Seminary.
By the way, I'll just say this, a Jesus seminar, what a pile of garbage, okay? There's so much to say about that. And actually, what we may end up doing is we may end up making a video discussing that. It's not really relevant to the discussion that we're having here, but it is definitely something that we should talk about. And where we are in Southern California, this place is right around the corner where all of this happened. And it's just ugly. It's just so ugly, filled with lies. No scholarship at all. Very, very little scholarship involved. As a matter of fact, it's just a lot of derogatory nonsense that, in my opinion, is very propagandist. Of course, that's just the nature of the way all of this goes. But watch how Jay treats this. There is a ton of scholarly integrity in the conclusions that he comes to here. Let's pay attention.
Folks, so our Bible has been attacked for 200 years. We've had historical criticism, we've had higher and lower criticism, we've had redacted criticism, we've had source criticism, we've had form criticism, we've had textual criticism, so that by 1905, the Bible was so decimated, and along with Darwinianism, it decimated the church in Europe, and the church has never recovered in Europe. To this day, only 5% of the Europeans still go to church. 5%. Britain is a little better, 7%. Can you see what historical criticism has done to our Bible and to Jesus Christ? But here's the difference. In the last 100 years, we've answered every one of those criticisms. There is no problem with JEDP anymore. There is no problem with the textual criticism that were there. We pretty well know where the text is. We pretty well know where 99.9% of it comes from. We have more documentary support for the New Testament than any other book in history. Take a look at just the manuscript evidence we have for the Bible. Look and see what we have: 800 Greek manuscripts, 860 Greek manuscripts. We have 10,000 Latin Vulgates. We have 19,000 manuscripts of the New Testament in 11 different languages. You add that up to a little over 24,000 manuscripts we can look at. What does Islam have for their manuscript evidence? 6 early manuscripts, that's it. And as I said in the last service, the previous service, those 6, none of them are complete, none of them agree with each other, none of them are from the 7th century. They begin to appear in the 8th, and they pretty much are put together in the 8th, 9th, and 10th century. Muhammad was supposedly receiving this text and having it written down in the 7th century. So can you see we're way ahead of them in manuscript evidence? But don't just use the manuscripts. We have partial manuscripts. So listen, we have also the lectionaries. We have 2,135 lectionaries that were written by the 6th century. That is 100 years before Islam even came into existence. So that's a whole other genre besides the manuscript evidence. And then we have the early church fathers' quotations. 2 men, Dr. Jean Burgon and Dr. David Dalrymple, in the last century started amalgamating all these early church quotations and came up with 85,000 of these early church quotations. Now, not many of them were early, so they went to just the earliest ones, the ones that predate the Sinaiticus, the Alexandrinus, and the Vaticanus, the 3 metropolitan codices, the entire New Testament that are written in the 4th and 5th century, so they had to predate the 4th century. They wanted to find out how many of the early church fathers' quotations they could find. And they came up with 36,000 that predated the 4th century. When they looked at those 36,000, they wanted to see how many of them would actually include the Gospel of John. Because the Gospel of John is by far the most difficult gospel for Muslims, because it is the one that is the most Christological. It was written by John for that reason, to confront the Gnostics. And that's why it's just replete with references to his divinity, to the Trinity. It's by far the most difficult ones for Muslims to read. And that's why these 2 men wanted to find out how much of these early church fathers' quotations quoted the Gospel of John. And guess what they found? Just by using these early church fathers' quotations, they could reproduce the entire Gospel of John except for 11 verses. Except for 11 verses. That means we could throw away the manuscripts. Please don't. We could throw away 24,000 of them and still reproduce the most important gospel, the Gospel of John, from a completely different genre, on top of which we have the lectionaries, which is a whole other genre, on top of which we have the manuscript evidence.
And by the way, this issue that he's mentioning with the early church fathers is an extraordinary one. As a matter of fact, if you take some time to dig into how they did this, it is so absolutely remarkable. And what's really unique is the fact that nobody actually debates the authenticity of the writings of the early church fathers. Nobody, including the secular world. They don't debate it, although there's a lot more manuscript evidence in some contexts for parts of the New Testament. They still don't debate it. They don't come against it. And when you start looking at the writings of the early church fathers and many of the doctrines that they speak about and the things that they say, you can see the New Testament being quoted. And like he said, I didn't realize, I knew it was only a small amount of verses, but I didn't realize the exact number. It's 11 verses. It's pretty extraordinary. I knew it was a few. I just didn't realize it was 11. And that's a pretty extraordinary thing when you think about it, because we have so many different levels of evidence that show the validity of the scriptures, that show the authenticity of the scriptures, that prove the fact that God's word is without any error, and that we understand that his word is true. And so it's something that we can put our faith and trust in. It's something that we can rest in, and it's pretty remarkable. But guess what, folks? You can't say that about Islam. You cannot say that about Islam. And that's a pretty heavy thing to say, but it's very true. You cannot say that about the Qur'an.
No other piece of literature can claim what I've just claimed. Certainly this book can't. We showed that in the last service. But we did that last service. Now I want to talk about the man behind this book. And I want to talk about the city he comes from. The city would be Mecca, and the man is Muhammad. Let's start with the city. Because the nice thing about this, if you take down the city and take away the city, then it doesn't matter what Muhammad you're talking about. If he doesn't come from Mecca, it's not the Muhammad of Islam, right? The Muhammad of Islam has to have lived in Mecca, has to have been born there. He was born there in 570. In 610, he started receiving revelations there. And when you just take the Quran and split it in half, the second half would be Meccan. This is all the Meccan surah. The first half would be Medina. Isn't that odd? The Medina starts first and the Meccan comes second, though this is the part that was revealed first and this is the part that was revealed second. Turn upside down, you got the right sequence. But nonetheless, this is Mecca. So he starts receiving these revelations in 610 up until 610 up until 622, when he then moves to Medina and then continues to receive the Medinans up until 632 when he dies by being poisoned by his wife. So here you have the book itself there in Mecca. He's living in Mecca. He moves from Mecca to Medina in 622. So there has to be a Mecca for him, right? More than that, Mecca has to be a pretty old city. Why? Because in chapter 7, verse 24 of the Quran, it says that when Adam and Eve were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, it doesn't say they were thrown to Mecca, they're saying you're thrown down to earth. To understand where on earth they were thrown down to, you need to go to the traditions. You need to go to Al-Bukhari. And Al-Bukhari says very clearly that she was thrown down to Mecca and Adam was thrown down to Sri Lanka. Whoever threw them down was a lousy shot. Don't worry. Good old Adam was 90 feet tall. And so he just stood up and went boom, 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 all the way up to join his wife in Mecca. That's what the traditions tell us. So that means if Mecca is where Adam and Eve were, it would have to be the earliest city in mankind, right? There's no one earlier than Adam and Eve. Am I correct? Yeah. So you can't have a town that is, unless there are people. So it would be the earliest inhabitant for mankind, number one. In chapter 21 of the Quran, it says that Abraham was living in Mecca. He was the one that rebuilt the Kaaba with Ishmael, his son. If he's there in the Kaaba in 1900 BC, because that's when he was living, then it has to be one of the most historical cities. Certainly it's been around since 1900 BC. According to the traditions, all the trade going north, south, east, and west came to Mecca. Mecca was at the center of trade. That's why it was so rich. That's why it was so powerful. That's why it was so important that Muhammad controlled Mecca. So certainly, historically, it should be one of the greatest cities, historically speaking, that should be on the lips of every person and certainly be documentary support for it. There should be some document that support this place. There should be someone that wrote about it.
All right, folks, let's stop right here for just 1 second because I want to point this out. Just based on what Dr. Jay just said, you've already eliminated the credibility of the claims of Islam. Already. And he's going to explain why, because the very existence of Mecca is brought under question during this time period. And there's many other issues that are completely brought under question. And it's obvious. The evidence is there. We understand it. We know it. It's clear. But you haven't seen anything yet. Watch this.
A scholar named Dr. Patricia Corona, who's a friend of mine before she died, she was a lady who could read and write 15 languages. How many of you can read and write 15 languages? Now, not just modern languages, these are archaic languages. Languages like Akkadian, Syriac, Nabatean Aramaic. These are languages like Nubian languages, the Himyarite languages. These are languages all around the Middle East. She could read and write all of them. She's the only one in the world that I know of that can do that. She is from Denmark, and she was teaching in the head of department at Oxford University. When she started asking the question I just asked, why is it we don't have any record of this city? Or what record can we find? Now, she would be the best place to find any record because she could read all the languages. So she went to all the documents from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way up into the 8th century and could not find one reference for any of these, this place called Mecca. She went to all the documents that were surrounding that area. Oh, she found lots of references to other towns, small little towns that are close to Mecca. She found references to Aden in the south, and to Sana'a, to Najran, to Taif, to Yathrib, to Khaybar, to Tabuk, all the way up to Petra. All of these are up on the western plateau. These are just little hamlets along the western plateau of Arabia. Not one reference to Mecca. What does that tell you? Doesn't look like Mecca existed in any documentary form. If this was where Abraham lived, if this was where Adam and Eve was at the very beginning, if this is the earliest inhabitant of mankind, someone should have said something about it. So she went then to the documents of all the people that were there that were from those different societies. So she went to the Himyarites, which are in what is Aden today. No reference to Mecca. So she went to the Assyrians. No records of Mecca. She went to the Romans, no records of Mecca. She went to the Persians, no records of Mecca. She went to the Nabateans, way up in the north, no records of Mecca. She went to the Nubians, right across the Red Sea, no record, not one word about a place called Mecca. Not one word. Until she found a document. The Apocalypse of Pseudo-Methodius Continuata, written in 741 AD. 741, that's the 8th century AD. Muhammad died in 632 AD. This is over 100 years later. Finally, she found a record, the first reference to Mecca anywhere in the world, and it's there, right there in this Continuato. And what was interesting is it places it way up in Haran. That's in southern Turkey. Mecca in southern Turkey? That's 1,000 miles, that's 1,200 miles further north. It's in the wrong place. So that can't be the same Mecca. So she decided to look at the maps. And now to go to look at the map, there are no maps in the ancient world because they didn't use maps because they didn't think about looking from looking in space down. We can do that today because we do have aircraft that can do that. But back then they would just write reference after reference after reference. And the one who wrote all about Arabia is called Ptolemy. He was living in the 2nd century AD. And Ptolemy is the geographer of Arabia. He is the one that wrote the Geography of Arabia. And she went to look at his works. And you can see, they're right there. You can read them. You can get in the library today. And there are different Europeans who have tried to put maps together looking at what he said. And look at those maps. They have all kinds of little places and hamlets and all the rest, and rivers and mountains. But no reference to Mecca in any of them. Not one reference to Mecca. This is a problem, folks.
By the way, if this sounds absolutely crazy to you, if this sounds ridiculous, maybe you're from the Middle East, maybe you're born in Saudi Arabia. My mom and my dad are both born and raised in Egypt. I'm going to tell you this right now. None of this is disputed. Okay? None of it is. The serious scholars, the ones who are truthful, the ones who actually are willing to speak with real scholarship and have integrity in the representations will all say, yeah, we agree. We don't see any reference to Mecca as we know it today in Saudi Arabia. Very important fact here. That's a very important distinction. And I want you to really think about that a little bit because it's going to have a heavy play in what he's about to bring up. And this is important stuff, okay? We can't separate these things from one another. Just pay very special attention to what he says here.
But why do you think there's no reference to Mecca? I can answer it with one word. In fact, I want to let my students answer that. What is the reason?
Water.
You have to have water. Am I correct? In order to exist, for people to exist, you have to have water. Why? No water, no food, no people, no towns, no cities, no civilization, no history. How long did it take me to say that? That's all you need to say. Look at a map. Just look at any map. Go home and look at a map and see where Mecca is. It's in a desert. There's no water there. There never has been any water there. There never will be any water there. Oh, I lie on that one. There will be water there. The water is there now, but it has nothing to do with Allah. The Zamzam well is there. Muslims will tell you, the Zamzam well has always been there. Have you ever seen a picture of the Zamzam well in the 1800s? It's 30 feet across and 50 feet deep. And this is the well that Muslims say that all the pilgrims, 4 million pilgrims that come to Mecca every year, they come and they drink the Zamzam well because it gives them, it heals all their sicknesses. This is the well that everybody wants you. You go to any bookshop here or any Islamic center and go on their shelf, there's always Zamzam water for you to drink. Usually liter after liter after liter. It supplies enough water for 1.8 billion Muslims. From one little well that's only 50 feet deep and 30 feet wide. Don't worry, Muslims will say because Allah supplies it. Allah supplies it, and He will always, it's inexhaustible because of Allah. This is what they'll tell you. Well, I decided to go up and look on Wikipedia to find out exactly about this Zamzam well. You can do the exact same thing what I'm going to tell you right now. Go up on Wikipedia and put Zamzam there, and they'll show you pictures of the well. It's been capped as of 1953. There's a cap on it, and there are some pipes going down into it. And when you look at you follow, they even have pictures of the pipes going in and pipes coming out. So follow the pipes. The pipes then go up to the mountain, overlooking up on the hill, and there are 11 huge big tanks, the largest water tanks in the world, 11 of them, built by Britain. United Kingdom. Now follow the water from the tanks to their source. They just follow the waters and they start going down the mountain down to Jeddah on the Red Sea. And you look and see where those pipes go. They go to these big desalination plants. The largest desalination plants in the world are right there in Jeddah, built by Bechtel Corporation, Kansas City.
He's not wrong. That's all verifiable. The pictures are right here. Take a look. What he's saying is 100% correct. There is nothing inaccurate about the depiction that he's drawing for you. This is exactly true, and this should cause everybody to think twice about the claims that are being made, okay? There's a massive lack of credibility here, and when you put it up to the truth, it just doesn't match. Pretty incredible.
This has nothing to do with Allah. It has to do with us, America. Thank God for America that we supply the water for that Zamzam well. Can you see why all you need to show, and all you need to do is just follow the source, follow the evidence on the ground. Folks, can you see then why, if there's no water there, then why in the world would there be a man named Muhammad who lived there, who supposedly built an empire there? Why would there be a place called Mecca that has the Kaaba, that people circumambulate? Just look and see what they do when they go to Mecca. They go to that square building and they circumambulate 7 times counterclockwise. Hold on a minute. Ask any Muslim, why do you circumambulate around a square building 7 times going counterclockwise? Wouldn't you rather go clockwise like everybody else does? And 7, where does the number 7 come from? You know the answer. Judaism. And who circumambulated 7 times going counterclockwise? You said it. Go ahead, say it a little louder.
Jericho.
Jericho. It comes from Jericho. It's the Jews who do that. They do it, and where do they do it? And where were they doing it in the 7th century? And where were they doing it prior to the 7th century? Before the temple was destroyed, they did it at the temple in Jerusalem, Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah had the Kaaba. Kaaba is the same word in Hebrew. It means cube. The Holy of Holies was called the Kaaba. And the Jews circumambulated 7 times going counterclockwise because of Jericho. This is nothing more than borrowing from Jerusalem.
By the way, this is something we talk about a lot with Islam. We talk about the fact that Islam is designed around taking principles from Christianity and making heresies out of those principles. That's exactly what you're seeing here. And they take something that is original from Judaism, where we, the completed form of Judaism is Christianity, where we get all of that stuff from, and Islam has pretty much made a heresy of it all. And that's exactly what Islam is all about. This is what they're very, very good at doing. It's very important that we recognize that.
It was the Jews that did this. That's why they're still doing it today. However, look and see what they do next. Anybody know, after they circumambulate 7 times, what do the Muslims do next? I know none of you have been there, but you must have seen pictures, or you've talked to your Muslim friends. Ask them what they do next. Not kiss the camel, no. They run back and forth between 2 mountains, right? Right? Just say yes. Yes. They run back between 2 mountains called Marwa and Safa. Marwa and Safa. Right next to the Kaaba, really it's just about 100 feet away from the Kaaba, are these 2 mountains, right? And the reason for that is because Hagar was the one that was there in Mecca. She was thrown out of Mecca by Abraham, who's living in Mecca. She went out to the desert and she ran out of water, of course. And she needed water for Ishmael. So she left Ishmael where he was, and she ran towards Marwa, which is the mountain of Marwa, and looked for water, couldn't find it. So she ran towards Safa, couldn't find water, and she went back and forth 7 times. There's the number 7 again. Isn't that interesting? Finally, when she came back to Ishmael, depressed, she looked down and she saw water burbling out of the ground. So she said, Zamzam, Zamzam, enough, stop. And that's why you have the Zamzam well today. Now, just stop and think that through. Hold on a minute. Take a look. Go up on Wikipedia and ask and look for the pictures of Safa and Marwa. And you will find that they are just big hunks of rock about 20 feet high. 20 feet high, children can climb on it. These are not mountains, folks. These are just rocks. And if she was out in the desert and ran out of water, and she's only 100 feet away from the Kaaba, right in the middle of Mecca, which has thousands of houses all around it, why did she just go on the next house and knock on the door and ask for water? Obviously, this is not the original Marwa, and this is not the original Safa. These are not even mountains. These are what we call facsimiles. These are models of the original thing. So where is the original Marwa and the original Safa? You all know where I'm going with this. Where do we go? Jerusalem. Go back to Jerusalem and look at what the Jews did whenever they came to pilgrim. When the pilgrims would come to the temple, they would do circumambulate 7 times around the Kaaba, and then they would go down from where they were. Where do you think the Kaaba was? Mount Moriah. What's the Arabic word for Mount Moriah? Marwa. Then they go down to the Kidron Valley and then come back to Mount Scopus. These are mountains. They're still there today. Mount Scopus in Arabic is Safa. That's the original Marwa and Safa, written by Josephus, the historian in the 2nd century. He refers to them by name as Marwa and Safa. The Muslims have just borrowed what was already there, and instead of having mountains, they made them into small rocks. These are models of the original. Now you've seen this even happen today. What else have we built out of the desert? Well, try Las Vegas. Built out of the desert as a playground for all the people. Now what's there? There's an Eiffel Tower there, and over here is a pyramid. Is that the original Eiffel Tower? No, they're facsimiles of the original thing. We do that even today. Take a look at Dubai. 20 years ago, Dubai was a desert. There was nothing there. It has the tallest building in the world. It has the biggest ski slope. It has a whole world of islands. It is the playground for everybody. It's where everybody comes to sell and buy. It's become basically the Mecca of entertainment. What do you think Mecca has become? Mecca has become the place for pilgrimage. And there was basically they just taken what was in Jerusalem and brought it down to a place called Mecca. But when did they do that? There's no reference to it in the 7th century. This was all done in the 8th century, when Mecca had to be chosen because they couldn't use Jerusalem because it had too much history. Mecca had no history. So why did they do that? Well, now we're going to get to Muhammad. We pretty well know that there was no Mecca there in the 7th century. If there's no Mecca, then it doesn't matter what Muhammad you show me, he's not from Mecca. If he's not from Mecca, then where is he from? It's not the Muhammad of Islam, right? I think we can say that pretty categorically. So what you need to do is you need to look and ask, well, what is the word itself? Does anybody know Arabic here? Where happened to my Abdul? I lost my Abdul. Where's Lynn? Okay, Lynn, why don't you come sit over here? Well, I can see her. I'll just come over here. Lynn, you know Arabic. So Muhammad, the word itself, how many consonants are there? 4. And how many vowels are there? 2. And so you have the mim, ha, mim, dal, right? And then you have 3, the dama and a fata, okay? So in order to even pronounce the word or write it on a piece of paper, you would have to have 4 consonants and 2 vowels. Well, 3 vowels, but 1 repeated twice. So you have mim, ha, mim, dal, or MHMD in English. Now, you know Arabic, right? Was there any vowels in the 7th century? No. Vowels were not really created till the 9th century, right? So there were no vowels to write the name Muhammad. So if there are no vowels, why don't you take those vowels off, and what are you left with? 4 consonants. Now pronounce it. You can. Muhammad. It's now Muhammad. It's not Muhammad, it's Muhammad. Suddenly now we have a completely different word. In fact, Muhammad is very well known. Muhammad you can get everywhere. In fact, why don't you open up your Bible to Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 16, and read it in Hebrew, if you have a Hebrew Bible. Because Solomon writes about it. The Muhammad, the altogether lovely one, O daughters of Jerusalem. He's referring to himself. That's the Muhammad. It's the same word in Hebrew as it is in Arabic. It is the altogether lovely one. It's also known as the anointed one. He's also known as the praised one. So this is not a name, it's a title. Ooh, I love this. It's a title referring to a person. But as it became known as the praised one, the anointed one, the Jews started referring to the Muhammad who is yet to come, the Messiah who is yet to come. They're waiting for the Muhammad in Arabic, the Messiah. Now, by the 4th century AD, the church father named Ambrose, Saint Ambrose, saw what the Jews were waiting for. Well, he was speaking Aramaic, and he also spoke Syriac, which has the same consonant. So he wrote that this Muhammad in Aramaic is actually the Messiah who's already come. And he's going to come a second time. And he is Jesus Christ. So the Muhammad, according to St. Ambrose, is Jesus Christ himself in the 4th century. So now jump to the 7th century. We're no longer in the 4th. We're now 300 years later. And you have Muhammad appearing everywhere. The Jews were using Muhammad, actually, they were using it as a title to apply to their exilarchs. An exilarch is a Jewish authority outside of Jerusalem when the temple was destroyed in the 70 AD and all the Jews had to leave Jerusalem and had to go into the diaspora. They took their scriptures with them, but they also took their authorities. By the time they made it all the way to what is today called Baghdad, it was called Ctesiphon at that time during the Sasanian period, they started seminaries there. And the ones who ran the seminaries there in what is today Iraq, who were all Arabs, though they were Jews, they spoke Arabic, they were Jews who spoke Arabic, they used the word Muhammad as a title before their name. So Muhammad ben Huzail was the exilarch of the 7th century. Muhammad, the praised one, not the Messiah, the praised one, who was the exilarch. So Muhammad's well known in Judaism in the 7th century. When he died, the next one that came on was Salman, Muhammad bin Salman. So he was the next exilarch. 5 exilarchs in the 7th century all had Muhammad before their name. So the Jews knew who the Muhammad was. He was the Messiah yet to come. They're still waiting for the Muhammad. The Christians, meanwhile, were waiting for the Messiah to return. And so they would use Muhammad to refer to this Messiah. So now we come to probably the crowning thing that's really going to underline this. We now come to the caliphs. Now you've heard that the caliphs in Islam are known as Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Those are the first 4 caliphs that come after Muhammad. Abu Bakr, he only lasted 2 years. He died came to power in 632, lasted until 634. He died nicely. Umar comes to power. He only lasts 10 years. He dies from 634 to 644. He is killed. And then, of course, comes Uthman, who's the one that actually wrote this book, and put it into a textual form. And he lasts from 654 up till 644 up to 656. So he only lasts for 12 years, and he is killed. And then Ali comes at the very end, and he lasts only 5 years, from 656 to 661. He is killed. So the last 3 are all killed. But nonetheless, what's the first thing you do when you become a caliph? Well, time you are an emperor or a caliph or a king, the first thing you do, or if you're in ancient world, is you get up and you tell the people on the radio and you tell the people on the television and you get it out in the newspaper so everybody can hear that you're the new emperor, right? No, come on. They didn't have newspapers or radios and televisions back there in the 7th century. I had everybody say yes, that's right. Because that's what we would do today. But we're in the 7th century. There was no radio. There were no newspapers. There were no television. So how do you announce yourself to the whole world? How do you announce yourself so everybody, all the way from Spain over to India, from Turkey down to Yemen, the second largest superpower today, how do you announce that you are now the new caliph? You would mint coins. That's the best way. You would mint coins, knowing that the coins would get in the hands of everybody. So they minted coins. And if you look, the coins are there. I've got them. I'm buying them. Please buy them, because we need to buy them, because the more we buy them, the more the Muslims cannot buy them and melt them down. And these coins were either gold solidus's, or they were copper coins, or they were silver coins. Those are the 3 metals they use. The great thing about coins, if you don't melt them down, they last forever. They are indomitable. They don't disintegrate. They don't deteriorate. That's why coins are great, because they're made out of metal. Look at the coins. The coins tell the story. And what you will notice is in the 7th century, these are Arab coins. They're in Arabic, but there's no reference to anybody named Muhammad on them. There's no reference to anybody named Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman or Ali. So here are the first 5 caliphs that didn't mint coins, yet everybody mints coins, which suggests to me there was no Muhammad, there was no Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, since there's no coins to support it.
By the way, he's going to get a little bit more into the issue with the coins. The one thing that I have to tell you, and we'll show you some pictures of some of these coins, they're from Jay's collection. The one thing that I would tell you is this. The moment the Muslims catch on to this, and they're already catching on, they're already finding out, they're already beginning to recognize what's really happening, they are going to go out of their way to find these coins and burn them down. They are going to destroy these coins. They are going to do whatever they can to remove any record of the existence of these coins, because these coins collaborate the story that Jay is referring to. This is critically important that you recognize this. By the way, Jay will say this: buy those coins. Buy them. Whatever you do, buy them, because they really do tell a very important story. They're critical stories. I plan on buying a few myself.
In fact, we can't find any documentary evidence for any of those first 5 caliphs. None, not one. The first caliph that we can recognize that actually has coins that we can see is named Muawiyah. And if you were a Muslim, you know exactly who I'm talking about, because he is the one that introduces the Umayyad Caliphate. And he introduces it by destroying Ali at the Battle of Siffin, which never existed, but nonetheless, he took over at the battle in 661, and the first thing he did is he minted coins. Where did he mint them? In Damascus. Wait a minute, Damascus? If he's a Muslim, what's he doing way up in Damascus? Shouldn't he be down in Mecca, Medina? Why isn't he down in Mecca, Medina? One word: no water. No water, no food, no people, no towns, no cities, no civilization, no coins. That's why there's no coins down there. There's no mints down there. Look at where the mints are. They're all up in the north, and they're all down in the south in Yemen. Why are they up in the north and down in the south and not in the middle? Because of water. It's as simple as that. One word destroys that argument. Learn that, folks, because whenever Muslims say, well, we have this, we have the Zamzam well, or we have this, we know that Muhammad was there, I say, wait, there's no water there, no water there. It shuts down those arguments so quick. Now, so you have this Mu'awiyah, he's putting together the first caliphate, the first empire of Islam, right? This is the first Muslim empire. And there he is up in Damascus. And he mints coins, which is what every caliph does. And he mints coins, and look at the coins. I've got them. You can see them. And there is a picture of him on the front. And he's got his name there, Mu'awiyah. And he's holding a cross in his hand. He has a cross above his head. He has a spear with another cross next to him. On the back side of the coin is the letter M, means it's number 40. And at the top of the M is another cross. Is there a problem with that? How can he be a Muslim if he's having crosses and wearing crosses and having a cross on the back? 4 crosses on one coin, 3 on the front, 1 in the back. Obviously, he's not a Muslim. He's a Christian. In fact, every one of these coins have Christian crosses on them, proving that Mu'awiyah was not a Muslim. But here's what's curious. 2 years after he's in power, well, before I get to that, the other great thing you can use are called inscriptions, rock inscriptions. See, rock inscriptions are great because they're made out of rock, which means they don't disintegrate, they don't deteriorate, like the coins. That's why I like them, because they're there forever, and they'll last forever. And just read the inscription. Al-Jalad, who is the world authority on the inscription, and Ilke Lindstad, who did his doctoral thesis on the inscriptions, he has looked at 40,000 of these inscriptions. And he notices that in the 7th century, all the inscriptions are in the north and they're in the south. None of them are in the middle. Why are they not in the middle? There's no water. You're getting it. You're getting it now. Listen, the Romans knew this in the 2nd century. They called Arabia, they had 3 names for Arabia. They said Arabia Petraea, which is in the north. That includes Syria and Iraq, and includes Lebanon, and includes Israel. That's Arabia Petraea, because of Petra, their capital. And in the middle is called Arabia Deserta, for a reason, because it's a desert. And at the bottom is called Arabia Felix, which means Happy Arabia, because that's where the Hadramaut is. That's where today Yemen and Oman. And there was plenty of water down there. There was plenty of water up here, but nothing in between. So the Romans knew already that there was nobody there. That's why if you look at all the maps, the Roman maps, it's all white. There's no cities, there's no towns, there's no trade routes. It's all in the north and the south, and everybody went up the Red Sea to get back and forth. They didn't go across the Red Desert, they went up the Red Sea. It was done by maritime. So here we are, Mu'awiyah comes to power, and in 663 he mints, before this he builds a dam. He builds a dam in a place called Taif, which is about halfway down. He builds a dam up in the mountains there, and he puts an inscription next to the dam. And he writes, but he writes in Greek. Why would he be writing Greek if he was a Muslim? Only Christians wrote in Greek. And there's his name in Greek, and he calls him Abdallah, slave of God, the Al-Muminin. Now remember, the name God, Allah, is the generic name in Arabic for God. Just like G-O-D in English is the generic name for God in English. But it didn't say which God. It just says Allah, the God. So he was the servant of God, leader of the believers. What believers? Look at the top right, left-hand corner, and there's a cross up there. He was a Christian. He was the leader of the Christians. It's as simple as that. Coins don't lie, inscriptions don't lie. And then in 663, he mints a brand new coin. There's his image, there's the cross, he's holding the cross. On the backside, there's the letter M, and there's another cross, and then underneath the M are 4 letters in Arabic. Mim, ha, mim, dal. Ooh, M-H-M-D. No vowels, no dots, because no vowels and dots had invented yet. This is the 7th century. Who do you think he was referring to? Muslims all over the world say, yeah, see, Mr. Smith, we've got you on this. There's Muhammad, there's Muhammad. I say, no, wait, that's not Muhammad. That's Muhammad. Who do you think Muhammad is? That's Jesus Christ. Since the 4th century, that's been Jesus Christ. Muhammad has always been the title, waiting for the anointed one, the praised one. That's proving that he is a Christian. Oh, I love it. It makes it so easy. Now, we're going to end with this. When you look at all of the references, and Muslims are coming back and they're saying, no, wait a minute, Mr. Smith, there's reference after reference after reference to this man, Muhammad. I said, wait, Muhammad or Muhammad? Oh, we don't know about Muhammad. I said, well, none of these are Muhammad. You don't have any vowels or dots that early. These got to be Muhammad. They said, yes, but look it. You have the Doctrine of Jacobi written in 634. There's a picture. I said, that's not Muhammad. In fact, his name's not even there. It's just a man with a sword. And look where he's doing it. He's up near Jerusalem, too far. Muhammad never went that far north. And they said, well, yeah, what about Sabaeus? Bishop Sabaeus. He writes it by name, Muhammad. I said, not Muhammad, Muhammad. And look what he says. He's there in Jerusalem. He goes to Gaza. Did Muhammad ever go to Gaza? No, that's way too far north. So who is this? The Muhammad, the praised one. Okay, what about John Niku, who writes in the late 7th century, in 690, he refers to Muhammad by name. I said, look at it, it's written with a T. That is the Persian spelling of Muhammad. And look at, he's a Lahmid. The Lahmids are in northern Iraq. Again, way too far north. The praised one, way that far north? And then they say, oh yes, but look at John of Damascus. In 730, John of Damascus writes his masterpiece. Now remember, John of Damascus was in the courts of Abd al-Malik, who built the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, and he is there, he is watching this religion start to reform. But it's not a religion. Because what does John of Damascus, what does Abd al-Malik do? Abd al-Malik is the caliph who owns all the land from Spain to India and from Turkey down to Yemen. He now is the greatest of all the Umayyad caliphs. He comes to power in 685, and in 691, he builds the Dome of the Rock. Have you seen pictures of it? Looks pretty nice, doesn't it? Has a gold dome right there in the middle of Jerusalem. That's not the original building.
Yeah, this is something that's very, very unknown by a lot of people. But when you look at the Dome of the Rock, and if you see my finger right there, we'll circle it for you above my finger. That isn't the original building that was actually created. As a matter of fact, what you're seeing right here is a function of a reconstructed effort in the time of the Ottoman Empire, which brings some interesting insight as into what is on the Temple Mount and what that actually means to Islam. And it's such a really, really unique issue. It's a lot more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be. And it's particularly important in being able to understand the mindset of MBS in Saudi Arabia and why he is doing what he is doing. As a matter of fact, he is going out of his way to take as much focus as he can off the Temple Mount and to relieve the idea that the Temple Mount is one of the holiest sites in Islam, because he recognizes that the more attention goes to the Temple Mount, the less attention is going to be brought on Saudi Arabia. And already, because of the modern scholarship that's happening right now, the existence of Mecca is being brought under question. And of course, this brings together a much bigger issue, and that is a discussion of Muhammad, or Muhammad, as we would say. So this is interesting to see where all of this is going. And what he has to say here is getting even more eerie if you're a Muslim. If you're not, then this becomes very, very powerful stuff. Take a listen.
The original building, there's only two parts from the original building. It's the inner ambulatories in the center. That building you're looking at, it was built in 1876. 1876, not even 200 years ago. Can you see why? That's a modern building. You need to go to the inner ambulatories. He builds it right there in Jerusalem. It's the greatest structure of its day. And then he writes in Arabic on the inscriptions. But look at what he writes. These are all in Arabic. There's no dots, no vowels. He says, say not three, for God is one and he has no son. Who do you think that's attacking? Jesus. Say not three. He's attacking the Trinity, for God is one. That means he's the oneness of God. Attacking the divinity of Jesus, and he has no son. That's attacking his sonship. That's all against us. For God does not begetteth, nor is he begotten. That's attacking John 3:16. And then it follows, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. What have I just said? La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Yeah, Ya ilahi illallah wa Muhammadur Rasulullah is what he's saying. It means Allah is the greatest, or is the greatest, or there is no greater than Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Sometimes it's translated as his servant, but when you say Ya ilahi illallah wa Muhammadur Rasulullah, that's exactly what you're saying, which, by the way, is a very common phrase. It's said all over the place. As a matter of fact, even when the 9/11 terrorists went into the building, that was one of the phrases that they were saying. They were saying Allahu Akbar wa Muhammad Rasulullah, or they were saying Ya ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. It's very, very common, by the way, and normal. You hear this a lot in the Arabic language amongst Muslims, and it carries different connotations within the popular or within the particular context that he's going to bring up here. It becomes even more significant. You'll understand why.
There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad, the messenger of God. Notice I didn't say Muhammad, I said Muhammad, because there's no vowels there. That's the shahada. That is what every Muslim must, that's the statement of faith for every Muslim today, introduced by Abdul Malik in 691. Why was that not introduced by Muhammad himself, if it's the shahada? Why does it take him 60 years to put it on the Dome of the Rock? Because look and read it as it is. Muhammad, who is it? So there is no God but one. See, he's attacking Jesus' divinity, he's attacking the Trinity, and then finally he says, for there is no God but one. And the praised one, your praised one that you're all waiting for, is nothing more than the messenger of God. This is an anti-Trinitarian attack against the Trinitarians. This is known as Arianism. Arianism has been around since the 4th century. Who do you think Arianist was? What do you think the Council of Nicaea was all about? Who was Athanasius arguing against? Athanasius and the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century were arguing against Arianism. It has blown its head open. It has been around with us for 1700 years. In fact, today, who are the Arians today? The Jehovah's Witnesses. Same ones, the same people attacking us on the same thing. It's the Jehovah's Witnesses today saying that there is only one God but God, and there is no Trinity, and Jesus never claimed to be divine.
So do you understand the claim that he's making here, which, by the way, is founded in fact? It's not an incorrect statement. Anywhere you go in Islam today, as I just mentioned before, they say, Ya ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no greater God than Allah, or there is no God other than Allah. There's no greater God than Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. That's what they say. So what Dr. Jay is saying is that's not what they meant to say. He says back then what they actually meant to say, but has now been twisted in the modern day, is they meant to say there really is only one God. And Muhammad, instead of saying Muhammad, they say Mahmed, meaning referring to Jesus, is his prophet. In other words, they're putting down the deity of Christ. It is a oneness type of not even a oneness doctrine. It's a doctrine that basically says there is no a God who is the Holy Spirit, or no God who is Jesus. It's just one God, and Jesus, of course, is his prophet, but he himself is not God. So now when you hear people say, Ya ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, his claim is that that's not what the original statement meant, which, by the way, I think he's right. He says that the original statement meant something completely different. It was literally for lack of a better term, it was a heresy that was taught concerning the Bible. It was basically a man who believed that there was only one God and did not understand the doctrine of the Trinity. As a matter of fact, spoke against the doctrine of the Trinity, and as a result, actually took away the deity of Jesus, and that's exactly what that was. So when you see the inscription that's in the middle of that building, that dome that you see there in the original inscription, that's exactly what it'll say. You'll see that. Ya ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but it was Muhammad Rasulullah. There's no vowels, there's nothing like that. So that's what you're going to see, and that's what he's talking about. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Isn't it happening today as we speak? So here you have an anti-Trinitarian who's attacking the Trinitarians, and he is now the caliph of all, the second biggest superpower of the day. No wonder it finally stuck. But he was never, ever was a Muslim. There is no word called Muslim that early. He was a Christian, but he was an anti-Trinitarian Christian. He was an Arianist. This is nothing more. Islam was nothing more than attack against our Lord and Savior. But here's the problem. He was an Ishmaelite, as all the Arabs were Ishmaelites. He came in the line of Ishmael. They've traced their lineage back to Abraham. We come the line of Abraham as well, but we trace our lineage back through Isaac. The Ishmaelites against the Isaacites. Is that the word? Anyways, those from the line of Isaac. See, the Jews and Christians come through Isaac. We come through Isaac, they come through Ishmael. But here's the problem. They now have all the land in the world. They are the second biggest superpower of the day, but they don't have a prophetic line.
Yeah, this is also important to point out. And this might be a good fact for those of you guys that want to appreciate the background that my mom and my dad came from. This is the very reason why if you go to an Egyptian and you refer to them as an Arab, they'll get very offended by it, because Egyptians are not Arabs. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, you have to think this through for just a second. Where did Ishmael came from? Ishmael came from the sexual relationship that Abraham had with Hagar, and Hagar was an Egyptian. Okay, so if you are an Arab, you are the product of Abraham with Hagar, which means you are not an Egyptian. You'd be the product of the combination of Abraham and, of course, Hagar. So that's why Egyptians hate being called Arabs, because they're not Arabs, believe it or not. An Egyptian is an Egyptian. It's very different from being an Arab, and this is where all of this comes from. So this is where you see the distinction being really important between those that come from Isaac and those that come from Ishmael. They're very different people, and they have different backgrounds with different stories, and that's why it's really important to grasp where he's going with this, because again, he's speaking to the issue of the heresy of Christianity that was being spoken, which eventually morphed into Islam. That is important to understand, because if you understand that, then you'll realize Muhammad isn't Muhammad, and there was no such thing as the Muhammad that's being spoken about in modern day Islam today, and that's a very important point.
And they don't have a scripture. We have a prophetic line. We can trace the lineage all the way back from Isaac, all the way up to modern day, up to Jesus Christ. We have scripture. We have two, the Old and the New Testament. They are the ones that control the land. They control the holy places. They control Jerusalem, but they have no scripture. So what are you going to do? To create an identity for yourself, you're going to have to create a prophet who's in the line of Ishmael, and you're going to have to create a book, because every prophet has a book, a revelation. So what do? So you're waiting for the Muhammad, right? And you Jews are also waiting for the Muhammad, right? You Jews, you're waiting for the Muhammad to come the first time. You Christians, you're waiting for him to come the second time. We've got the Muhammad. And they put him up there on the Dome of the Rock, and they put him on the coins. 695. We now, 691, they put the coins up. And then in 696, Abdul Malik introduces a brand new coin. I bought it, cost me $1,300. It's a gold solar disc. La ilaha illallah. It has the Shahada, and then it has all these references attacking Jesus Christ, attacking his divinity, attacking his sonship, attacking the Trinity. And it says that we will be victorious against the associators. Who are the associators? The mushrikun, those who associate another with God. That's us. They believe we have elevated Jesus to the divine status. That is in 696, and that has now remained till present day. It's all against Jesus Christ. But now they have to introduce that Muhammad. Now to have that Muhammad, you need to give him a story. You need to give him a place. You need to put him in a place, but you can't put him in Jerusalem because that has too much history. That's why you have to introduce him to Mecca. You've got to put him in a place. But once you put him in a place, you've got to give him a backstory. Notice there is nothing written about Muhammad at all in the 7th century. There's nothing written about Mecca in the 7th century. There is no Qur'an in the 7th century. Did I not start that from the very beginning? So therefore, you need to look and see when these Qur'ans were starting to be introduced. The earliest manuscripts, like I said in the last service, only start to be introduced in the 8th century, but they're not complete. In fact, John of Damascus, who was right there in Abdul Malik's court watching this happen, he writes his greatest treatise in 730. He now retires, goes out to a monastery, and he writes it. And look what he says. Look at the title.
Okay, and before he gets into what this is being said, or what's being said here, you have to understand this is why we hit the fast forward button into the modern day, and you get insight as into what MBS is doing and the claims that he's making regarding Mecca. And this is exactly why he's trying to take the focus off of Jerusalem, because the more focus is on Jerusalem, the more awareness is developed concerning the fact that Mecca wasn't even around during the time of the fictitious Muhammad that's been created by Islam. And if that's the case, then in essence, what happens is the economy of Saudi Arabia completely falls apart. And I would venture to say that MBS is more concerned about the economy than he is even about Islam, believe it or not. That's why he's doing what he's doing. At least that's the theory that I have. And I think that many share in this theory.
The heresy of the Ishmaelites. Not Muslims, because that word had not yet been invented. The heresy, if you're a heresy, it means you have to be a heresy of something other. Heresy of another belief. Well, who do you think the belief is? The heresy is the anti-Trinitarians against the heresy. It means the Ishmaelites who are against the Trinitarians, who are those in the line of Isaac. And then he describes this Muhammad that you are now introducing, a new Muhammad, a third Muhammad. This is the new praised one. Look and see what they say about him. He writes terrible doctrines, and he writes 4 different books. The book of the cow. Wait a minute, this is only supposed to be one book. But notice what's in the 2nd chapter of this Qur'an. The book of the cow. The book of the table, that's chapter 5. The book of women, that's chapter 4. The book of the camel, that's chapter 0. There is no book of the camel. So here by 730, you now have 4 different books, all written by this Muhammad, 100 years after Muhammad, and it's not this book. Can you see? In one fell swoop, we can destroy the Quran, destroy Muhammad, and destroy Mecca all at once. Just by looking at the documents, by looking at the coins, by looking at the inscriptions. Now, so when did Muhammad actually come into life? When did he actually form? In order to look at that, you need to look at his biography, the Sirah. That's called the Sirah Torah, the biography of Muhammad Ali. How many of you know when the biography of Muhammad was written down? Anybody want to try to venture a guess? And who is the author?
The answer to this will also shock you, because you're hundreds of years apart from the time that Muhammad lived. Muhammad, forgive the sarcasm.
Okay, 200 years. And what's his name? No, what's his name? The one who wrote it. His name is Ibn Hisham. Okay, 833. Muhammad died in 632, right? So 833. Now, sir, what's your name? Lazarus. Okay, Lazarus. Can you tell me any document that Ibn Hisham wrote? Can you give me a manuscript?
And what he talks about Ibn Hisham, the thing that's really important to understand is what's real about him is the very thing that's damning about everything else. And this is important. And so pay attention what Jay says here, because I just want you guys to process it. That's why I'm interrupting at this point. I want to explain it a little bit more so you can process it, because what he's talking about is 1,000,000 miles per second, but this is really, really important.
Can you give me a manuscript? Oh, do you think he ever, okay, do you believe that he did write something down? You have no idea? I know, but you did say 200 years after, right? Okay, ask any Muslim this. Is there any manuscript written by Ibn Hisham from the 9th century? Because you're saying 9th century. Not one. We have no reference of anybody named Ibn Hisham who's written a manuscript. Not one extant manuscript exists today. So when does the first manuscript appear for Ibn Hisham, or for the Sirah of this man named Muhammad? The first manuscript doesn't appear till the 12th century. The final manuscript, the one we use today, the one that everybody uses, the Biography of Muhammad, translated by Alfred Guillaume, comes from a German scholar named Heinrich Ferdinand Wustenfeld in Germany, who went to 4 different universities in Germany and went to their libraries in Germany between 1856 and 1860, in that 2-year period, amalgamated all the stories you could find about this man named Muhammad and published it in 1860. Folks, that's 160 years ago. The biography of Muhammad that you're talking about was written 160 years by a German scholar in Germany. Bingo. We've just introduced that yesterday. That's yet to go up on the YouTube. We've found the extant manuscript. Well, let's go to his sayings, the hadith, much more prolific. Sahih Bukhari, Ibn Dawud, Sahih Muslim, Tirmidhi, all these 6 major sayings of the Prophet.
When he says he found the extant manuscripts, meaning he found the manuscripts that have survived that point to that. So keep in mind, only a few hundred years ago. You're not talking about, during the time of Muhammad. There's no way. You're talking almost 600 years, over 600 years after the time that Muhammad dies. That's what he's talking about here, folks. This stuff is incredible.
Take a look when they were written. Now, you will say 9th century again, because that's 870 for Al-Bukhari, 875 for Sahih Muslim, Tirmidhi, the Ibn Dawud, Nasa, and then up into 805. So let's say 9th, and did I say 905? So that's 9th and 10th century. 9th and 10th century. Do you know where the first manuscript comes for any of those traditions called the Hadith? 15th century. 13th, 14th, and 15th century. Do you see a problem with that? This is all the Ottoman period. This is not even the Abbasid period. These are 600 to 1200 years later. If you want to go to the Tahriq, the Tafsir, written by Al-Tabari, who supposedly wrote these in the 10th century, they don't appear till the 13th century, and there are two documents for them. They're in the 13th century in Istanbul, which again is Ottoman. None of these documents are from the 9th century. They're all from the 11th to the 18th century. 19th century.
This sheds a lot of light on all of this. And when you really want to come down to the foundation of so much of what is understood about Islam today, it takes you to the Ottoman Empire. It brings you back to Turkey. And this is why so much of this has become complicated, and so much of this has become convoluted, and so much of this has been hidden by a lot of folks. This is really important that you pay attention to what he says here, because this becomes super critical. Watch this.
They're all from the 11th to the 19th century. Folks, that's 600 to 1200 years too late. We know nothing about this man, Muhammad. We don't even have his biography. We don't even have his sayings. We have nothing about him until 600 years later. Now, let's put that on the other foot. That's as if I were to tell you that we know nothing about Jesus Christ. There was no Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John until the 4th century. That Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John did not live anywhere near Jesus. They all lived up in Turkey. They all wrote about Jesus down in a place called Jerusalem, but there was no Jerusalem in the 1st century. We don't have any reference to a city called Jerusalem in the 1st century. We have no reference to anybody called Jesus in the 1st century. And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who write his sirah, which means the biography of him, that's the black letters of your gospel account, or the hadith of Jesus, that's the sayings, that's the red letter. They were all up in Turkey writing 400 to 500 years later. How would we defend him? How would we defend him? Can you see how we're pretty much shutting down Muhammad? We're pretty much shutting down the Qur'an, and we're pretty much shutting down Mecca. And I haven't even shown you one of my PowerPoints. You haven't even seen this on a map or on a timeline. You're just hearing me say it. When you look at the timelines, and when you look at the maps, and when you look at the material, folks, it is devastating. No Muslim knows how to defend this. How would I defend it if this is the same foot, if this was on the same shoe for us? I couldn't defend Jesus. I would have no idea to know how I can say he was even historical. Thank God we don't have this problem. But Muslims do. Now, in this whole time, have I said anything that was hateful? Have I said anything that was Islamophobic? Is there anything that I could be struck off for saying this? No. Can you see? This is completely neutral. Can anybody use this material? Yes. Can the atheists use this? Yes. Absolutely. In fact, the atheists love this. When I left Speaker's Corner after spending 25 years there in 2017, I've been there since 1992, every Sunday, over 1,100 times I was at Speaker's Corner. When I left in 2017, the last man to see me was an atheist. He said, "Jay, please don't leave." I said, "Why not?" I said, "You've been a thorn in my side." He said, yes, but you're the first person, you're the first Christian we've ever met that's answering our questions. I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Every other Christian just talks about their story, about what God has done for them. Well, God's not done that for us. But you are the first one that asks historical questions, that asks the questions that we're asking." See, we're asking just one phrase: did he exist? That's all we're asking. Is it true? And you're answering that for us. We need this material, because you're supporting and showing how Jesus is true historically, how the Bible is true textually and all orthographically and paleologically. You answering all those questions, and now you're taking those same questions and applying it to Islam. And this stuff is brilliant, because this stuff we can use. I want to use it. And I turn to this: don't you ever use this. This is not for you. Please don't use it, you atheists and you humanists. All you're interested in is destroying Islam. These are my favorite people. I love these people. Because all you want to do is make them nihilists. You want them to leave Islam, but you have nothing to give them. You have nothing to replace it with. This is not for you. This is for us, folks. We are the only ones that have an antidote. We are the only ones that have an alternative. We are the only ones that have an answer. This has to be our critique, folks, because we are the only ones that have passed all these tests. We've already passed the redactic test, the formulaic test. We've already passed all of the textual, orthographical, paleographical tests. We have done it with the Bible. We've had to do it for the last 200 years. Therefore, we understand the power of it. But we also know how to handle it better. But the major reason is because we're the only ones that have an alternative. I don't want to take them away from God. I love them because they do believe in God. They just got the wrong God. I want to take them away from Allah and bring them back to Yahweh. I don't want to take them away from Revelation. They believe in Revelation. They just got the wrong Revelation. I want to take them away from this little book and bring them back to the bigger, the better book. I keep it bigger and better for a reason, so you can see. I want to take them away from Muhammad or the Muhammad, and I want to bring them back to Jesus. Folks, we're the only ones that can really handle this. We're the only ones that can use it. We're the only ones that should use it because we're the only ones that have an answer for them. We need to bring them home. We need to bring them home. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we love you. You're such a great God, but you're a God who didn't remain hidden. You didn't stay up in heaven. You came to earth. From the very beginning, you were there walking and talking in the cool of the day. You were there with Adam and Eve. You were asking, where are you? I want to have a relationship with you. From the very beginning, you came to earth over and over and over again. You came and you wrestled with Jacob. You came and you were in the burning bush with Moses. You were there in front of the children of Israel, leading them through the desert as a cloud during the day and a pillar of fire during the night. You could take on any form you want, and you came 2,000 years ago. You died on the cross for us. What love, no greater love is this. So Lord, you have been there in our history all the way through, and you've been wooing us back to yourself. But you know that another religion was formed in probably the 8th or 9th century, which desecrated you, which took away your divinity, took away the Trinity, took away your sonship, and tried to introduce something that was a monad. And look at the damage that religion has done. It's now called Islam. Look what they have done in the last 1,400 years. Look and see what they are continuing to do all over the world. They're taking over the world. They will be the dominant power. We need to help them. We need to bring them home. And Lord, the only way you can do that is to introduce you, to introduce your gospel, to introduce you as not a God who is distant, but a God who is eminent, a God who is imminent, and a God who dies for us and then rises again. Thank you for doing that. May we never forget that. But Lord, as we look at our Muslim brothers and sisters who are so deluded because of a book that just completely destroys everything they know about family, about love or relationship, anything they know about even their enemies, Lord, we need to bring them back to you, who told us to forgive our enemies, to love our enemies, to lay down our swords, for he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. What a beautiful example you gave. What a testimony you gave. What a witness you gave. May we be that for you. Lord, may we be a pen in the hand of a ready writer. Use us. Take us. Let us get into the Muslim world, and let us tell our Muslim friends that are all around us here, over 600,000 here in just this valley. Lord, help us to not only bring them home, but to introduce you in everything we say and do. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful. And the one thing that I can tell you that I love so much about what he says here is something that we all have to take to heart. And that centers around the fact that his love for the Muslim people is what drives him and constrains him to do what he does. And the things that we do here is because we do love these people. We want these people to come to know Christ. We want these people to understand that the true and living God is the one that they need to give themselves to, because there's no hope outside of it. And what Jay says here is remarkable. So I would just encourage you guys, when you, after watching this video, take this video and give it to lots of people. Show them where to go. In the show notes that we have, we're going to show you how to get to Jay's website, where you can get all of his information. Go support him by jumping on his YouTube channel. He's got a lot of great material, and it's powerful stuff. The man has dedicated his life to doing a lot of incredible work, and I would just simply say this: we have hope in Jesus. Listen, I want to say this. I want to make myself clear. Our true hope is in him. We have the true and living God. All the evidence is there. The scriptures are there. We know it. So we have our hope, and our hope is in him. So guys, let's get it. Okay, let's get on this. God knows, and we need to walk with him. We are running out of time. Christ could come at any moment. And let's focus on the true message, the true reason for every season, and that's Jesus. God bless you guys.